to another round of life sparring. In the blue corner, needing just 10 kilometers on the trail to smell like a big dog, from Hong Kong, your host, Fabian Gruber. In the red corner, back for running laps through some old man's backyard in Tennessee, chasing the top dogs of the trial running circle, from Aalborg, Denmark, Morten Klingenberg. This is Life Sparring Round 16. Let's go.
Okay, welcome to Life Sparring. Today I have another international guest about whom I'm very excited. I've got Morten Klingenberg from Aalborg in Denmark. We had Sweden now, we have Denmark, Germany, Switzerland. Pretty excited. And I think today it's going to be very obvious. It's not a well-kept secret that this whole Life Sparring podcast is actually just kind of a front for me to talk to people that I'm interested in. And the podcast is just a byproduct. So today that becomes pretty obvious because I'm fanboying a bit out tonight. Because Morten is a guy who just flew around the world to run in some old man's backyard for a few 30 hours in a race that actually didn't have a finish. What's in runner circles called a DNF, because he didn't finish the race. But I think he feels quite good about it, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's actually quite funny knowing that you've been running for like 31 hours and covering 200 plus kilometers. And well, all you get is like, yeah, well, you didn't finish.
But I mean, even if you would win that race, all you get is a handshake and bragging rights, right? So it's not a gold cover to the race by any means. And that's also what makes it so crazy. Exactly. So I was one of those. I think at the peak time it was around 2,000 people who were like following the race on a Facebook live stream. And I think it's a crazy race format. So we are talking here about Big Dog's Backyard Ultra Challenge. It's a race organized and created by the most legendary figure in trail running, a guy called Lazarus Lake, which is not his real name because he's terribly afraid of getting his identity stolen. At least that's what he says. Most likely it's also just part of the spiel. Yeah, and it's a race that literally happens in his backyard. And it's laps in his backyard. Maybe you can explain the format. I mean, you memorized the rules well, and you organized your very own version of the race.
Yeah, exactly. So the whole backyard concept is basically that you do, I think it's 4.1 mile. The equivalent is 6.7 kilometers. And you do that every hour on the hour. So every time there's another loop starting, you have to be in your starting core. And then you do the loop, and then you got a bit of rest. If you do run it in like 15 minutes, you got like this 10 minutes of a break period. So you can go to the toilet, get something to eat, catch a bit of small sleep or anything. And then you're back at it. And you just keep going and going and going until there's only one man or woman standing left at the end. So it's actually quite simple. And when you speak about it, it sounds rather easy. And it is. And Lazarus is quoted for a great quote saying it's easy until it's not. And that's really sums up the whole thing. It really is easy, but at some point it stops being easy anymore.
And it's fascinating because it kind of puts the noble concept of racing on its top, right? Because not the fastest runner is winning. So being fast can give you an advantage to some extent because you have more rest time, but at the same time, being fast might also just wear you out. And I mean, a lot of the top runners, they were starting out relatively slow, and there were like some runners that regularly clocked the fastest times, and at the end, they were not in the top 5. So that's a fascinating concept too, right? You're not sprinting. There's no sprint to the finish line. It's just moving yourself every hour back to the starting line and getting out there. And that's what's also said about the race, right? That the hardest meters are not the ones on the trail, but the ones from the chair to the starting line when the whistle is going. Before we talk more about Bigs, I think we should back it up a little bit and explore a little bit how you made it to Bell Buckle, Tennessee, to this old man's backyard. You haven't been running all your life, right? I mean, if I look at your CV, you seem to be, for large parts of your life, more interested in video games and computer technology. So how did that transformation happen? How did you end up in Tennessee?
Yeah, it's rather funny when you look back at it now. So a lot of years ago, they came out this computer game called World of Warcraft. I'm sure most of the people would know it by now. And it really caught on to me. I was playing like 40, 15 hours a week. And I was also not all that interested in doing any education, and I was actually unemployed at some time. And then I was just playing computer games and it was perfectly fine, I thought. And then one day I was like looking in the mirror, I was like, well, this is not really how I would like to look and I'd like to present myself. So I started doing short jobs, and I just did that for quite a few years, actually. No goals of actually becoming a runner or doing any. It was just a matter of keeping just a tiny bit in shape, right? But then eventually it caught on to me, and then I started doing half marathons. I was like, yeah, at one point I was saying, I'm never ever going to run half a marathon. It's just crazy far to be running, right? And then eventually it caught on to me, and I was like, well, okay, let me try it. And I did horrible. At least it felt horrible for half of it. And then eventually I was like, oh, well, this isn't too bad. And then I caught on to doing a marathon. And then after doing a marathon, I felt like I was Superman. I could do anything because I finished a marathon. And then at one point I found out there was actually people running even further than marathon. And I was like, well, that's just stupid. Let me try that and see what happens. And I've been doing ultra marathons for a few years. I did my first marathon in 2016 and did my first ultra in 2017. And then quite early on, I figured out that ultra marathon speaks to me on another level than just doing a fast half marathon or fast marathon. I'm not a fast runner at all. I mean, I've been climbing some quite decent times by recreational raw standard, but I'm not anywhere near elite or anything. And I'm not really motivated on doing a lot of very hard training just to earn like 10 seconds in a race or a minute in a race. So I started doing these types of ultra running, and I was like, oh, well, this is different because it's not a matter of going anywhere super fast. It's a matter of overcoming your mind and overcoming the negative thoughts, and also as a means to seek where is my boundaries, where are my limits, and also to get confirmed, right? And a lot of time it's a matter of getting it debunked, so my limits isn't where I thought they were. I can actually do more. So that really caught on to me. And then back in 2019, the first backyard race was held in Denmark here. And I was scrolling down. I just gotten divorced, and I was feeling quite miserable, really. And so I was just doom scrolling on Facebook, and then I saw this race. I was like, oh, well, that sounds just quite stupid enough for me to try this out. So I did that, and I was like, well, this is actually kind of fun because it's not a matter of going fast, and it's not a matter of covering a certain amount of distance. You just have to keep going. So it's a lot of mind game going on. So I did the first in Denmark, and I came back last year as well. Did that as well, and that really didn't go well. And for 2021, I was like, well, so I'm going all in now. So I was really preparing. This was my main goal for the year. And so in August, we did the race, and that the whole concept up until now has been that whoever wins this race will get a golden ticket, which basically means you're invited to go to Tennessee to participate. So I was like, well, there's only everybody else needs to stop before me because I have to be the last one standing. So I got into the race with that mentality. I was like, well, there's two things I need to do here. I'm going to have a lot of fun, and I'm just going to keep going. And eventually it ended up that way after 39 hours, which is the equivalent of 261 kilometers. I was actually the last one standing, and it was just very surreal, just standing there and actually being, and knowing that, well, now I got this golden coin, which represents the entry to the big dogs, and knowing that I would be leaving in 2 months' time or be participating in this race in 2 months later. And everything being Corona times and everything, there's been a lot of hassle actually making it to Tennessee because, well, there's a lot of restrictions going on in the world. And unfortunately, the US has some rules stating that you are not allowed to enter the United States if you have been in Denmark, for instance. And as I live in Denmark, I really needed to be going out of Denmark to be anywhere else of Denmark for 14 days prior to a race.
That's still a bit better than if you would come to Hong Kong, because in Hong Kong you would have to go for 3 weeks hotel quarantine, which would be probably the worst race preparation that you could do.
Yeah.
I mean, at least you're well rested and tapered, but it would be a rough one.
Yeah. So we actually ended up doing the third country way into the US. So we flew to Canada. And we spent 14 days in Canada, and then we flew into the US. So in that sense, we have this, what I call Danish quarantine. So we were supposed to be quarantined anywhere but in Denmark. But of course, we were able to move around and visit a lot of lovely places in Canada.
So how do you prepare for a race like this? You didn't have to prepare that much because the race in Denmark was not that long ago, but how did you prepare for it? I mean, it's such a different race from normal distance, and you don't know even like how long you're going to run. So what do you do kind of training-wise and before a race like this?
So in general, what I've been doing this last year or so is I have actually dived down on the amount of training, or actually the amount of kilometers, because I have figured out that if I do around 80 to 100 kilometers per week on average, this is a nice spot for me because I get to rest and I still get to get a few good training sessions in. In general, what I do is I very rarely do more than 30 kilometers per session. I'd rather do like 2 30 kilometer sessions, one on Saturday and one on Sunday, for instance. So for me, it's a lot of getting used to be running on tired legs where I'm sort of exhausted. But the real training that's not really going in your legs, it's going to be in your head, because it's really where you will need to bring your A game, because once you hit that spot where you don't think you can win, you might as well just quit. And that's usually also what happens, because it's so hard to turn it around. If you have just one bad loop, you most probably end up having less rest time. The next loop will be harder, and then you'll just be downward spiraling. So for me, it's been a lot of training, being in my mind and keeping a positive mindset, and also coming to peace with the fact that I cannot control anything. As a person, I'm very much a control freak, some might say. I like to be on top of everything. And so for me, it's been a lot of just figuring out that only so much I can control here. I cannot control the weather, but I can control how I react to it pouring down, for instance. And then obviously there's some physical stuff and keep my feet dry and so forth. But that's actually a lot of my training has been concentrated around the mental aspect of the running.
Did you train the sleeping part too? I mean, for Harvey Lewis, like said that I mean, he was the eventual winner of Big Dogs with a crazy amount of laps, 85 hours of running. So he actually said that he always did a 5-minute nap in his classroom in school, like when he was by himself during the lunch breaks, just to kind of set his alarm exactly for 5 minutes to train this kind of falling asleep within 5 minutes and waking up refreshed and not going the wrong way. I mean, is that something you ever
keep my feet dry and so forth? Yeah. But that's actually a lot of my training has been concentrated around the mental aspect of the running.
Did you train the sleeping part too? I mean, for Harvey Lewis, like said that I mean, he was the eventual winner of Big Dogs with a crazy amount of laps, 85 hours of running. So he actually said that he always did a 5-minute nap in his classroom in school, like when he was by himself during the lunch breaks, just to kind of set his alarm exactly for 5 minutes to train this kind of falling asleep within 5 minutes and waking up refreshed and not going the wrong way. I mean, is that something you ever like really practiced in a way, or Does that work for you at all? Do you sleep at all?
Unfortunately, I didn't practice it very much. I did practice a bit of self-meditation. So where you do like, status check, where you go up from your feet and all the way up through the body. And that helps me relax. But you actually hit right on the nail here, because this was actually something I was having difficult with. So even if I ran and I should be able to get at least 5 minutes of sleep during the nighttime, I wasn't able to, because I took it so long to fall asleep. So I didn't practice it. And I think actually that's very much on the top of my list of what I need to be practicing for the next time.
That's why I mean, if there would be like somebody taking bets, when I saw the last 3 runners, my money was on Terumichi Morishita from Japan, Mori, because I mean, I did an exchange study in Japan, and I know that the Japanese, they train this on the subway every day. They can fall asleep as soon as they sit down, and they magically wake up exactly at their stop without passing by. I think that's in Asia like something that, I don't know if this is an acquired skill or if it's genetically, but it's a giant advantage, I think, because when that's the funny part, right? Because I mean, at the end, over such an accumulated time, right? Like almost four full days of running. I mean, those 5 minutes sleep per hour is, as strange as it sounds, it could be like what decides about the race winner, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I'm pretty sure that it's actually a large or a huge factor in these type of races once you go on beyond, say, 2 days, for instance. Then most would actually think when they think about the race for the first time. It's been quite evident for me, at least, that is something I need to be practicing, because I felt that I was a bit forced to be running a bit too fast during the night loops in order to have at least 10 minutes of sleep, in order to actually fall asleep, to get something out of my sleep. So if I was able to fall asleep and get efficient few minutes of sleep, I wouldn't have to be forced to run as fast, and that would be conserving the energy, which in the long run would most probably help me out, getting a bit longer or a few more laps in before eventually DNFing.
So in Bell Buckle, you run 31 rounds. So how, like, there was a whole line of runners quitting in exactly the same round. Was there like something going on, like chatting? Like you turned back, right? So you decided after going out that you wouldn't make it and came back. Some others, they just didn't make it back in time. But I think it was quite a large number. And then normally, like, this loop change is often kind of critical moments, because people, like, especially if they change back from the night loop, which is on the road and a bit faster and easier to run, and then you go back to the trail, especially in the morning, light is still dim and there's elevation to deal with. And so these are normally kind of rounds where you always watch and think about it. Okay, who's maybe falling out? But lap 31 seems to be kind of in the middle of somewhere. So quite surprising to see so many dropouts in one single round.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was having issues with my stomach, and I was feeling sick. And I think I've been doing like 8 to 10, 12 laps perhaps with from stomach issues. So eventually I was just having severe stomach cramps, and so the day loop that starts going out on a bit on the asphalt, and then turn around and then you come back and doing into the trails. I was basically walking a lot, and I was sort of shuffling a bit about, and then I could see I could only just keep the required pace when I was on the asphalt. I was like, well, I'm not going to make it all the way through the trail loop here. But I was also a bit surprised to see some routes that I felt was quite strong, just dropping off. And it was a bit of a bummer. And I was like, oh, I think it was one guy, Ron, and I've been speaking to him early on the race, and he was doing it very good, it seems. And he also done quite, I think he did like 43 laps in his qualifying race. So he's been even running further on, and then all of a sudden he came in while I was sitting. I was like, wow, Ron, what happened here? So it's definitely, every time it's something different, I think.
And what do you do nutrition wise? I saw you are kind of fan of tailwind, it seems,
Yes.
for liquid carbohydrates. Do you have something special? I mean, I think Courtney Dauwalter is like famous for Fruit Loops and like all crazy stuff between her races. Like, do you have anything special? Did you have to bring something in from Denmark?
Yeah, that's actually one of my problems. I don't know if it's the main problem, but it was something a problem. So here in Denmark, we've got this it's called rye, and there's a lot of seeds in it, and it's very nice. We use it for a lot of our dinner time actually. And I used to take just one slice with put on a slice of cheese or a slice of ham or turkey or stuff, and just eat that. Because as you mentioned, I'm doing a lot of tailwind, and that's my primary source of energy. And then I eat this in between the loops in order to get something of any substance down in my stomach and be able to just get a bit of the water and bind it. But unfortunately in the US, you don't have that. I think it's a Scandinavian type of thing. So what we did was we brought some baking mixtures, but unfortunately it didn't taste quite well. And then we did try to find some in the US, but that wasn't exactly the same. And that was a bit of a hassle. And that's obviously, if I'm going, hopefully I'll be going in the next time there's an international event again, I'll be able to fly in directly and I'll be able to bring it from back home. But in general, I tend to mix up my nutrition strategy with a lot of real food. So mashed potatoes or pasta and meatballs, soup or anything, just to get something that's not too sweet, for one thing, and something that has a bit of texture, so you're actually feeling that you're eating something. I mean, I can go for like 15 hours or so just by drinking energy, and then at some point it's like, well, now I need to be feeling like I'm eating something.
Pretty awesome. And how was the trail? I read your blog that you wrote about the 2020 Danish Big Dane Backyard, where and I think that was actually for the satellite races that you did. The one where you said it went not so well, where you had like chin problems. And so this one, I think there you had a trail where you could power walk it pretty much without running if you had to. And so you experimented a lot with running parts of it and then walking parts of it. So how is that trail in Tennessee? Is that possible to also walk it, or do you really have to kind of keep a steady running pace?
It's not an easy trail, that's for sure. I don't think I will be able to power walk it, and I actually can walk quite fast. On flat, normal roads, I can actually do like 8 kilometers per hour just walking if I'm concentrated, and I don't think I'll be able to do that in the bits. I don't necessarily say it's super technical, but there's a lot of small breaks. So I was having a bit of trouble actually getting a good flow on the trail. So it was a matter of that, oh yeah, now I have to stop and now I have to walk, and here's the rock sticking out of the ground and I don't want to be falling over here. And then you had other spots where you was like, okay, yeah, so this is just downhill running, no problems at all, just keep going. So it's not as hard. Actually, I just didn't manage to find a good rhythm, a good flow on the trail. And one of the other things was that a lot of the other guys and girls, they were actually very, very good at just running on a very steady pace, slow but steady, even on the inclines. And that doesn't work very well for me. So I would rather be doing a bit faster running and then be walking more. So I was doing it a bit more different than they are. I'm not very good at just very slow running and just too much of a steady running.
But the trail is quite narrow partially, right? I mean, it looked, at least like where the camera was set up, it looked sometimes really quite narrow, as if it's hard to overtake somebody, even if you're in the bush.
Yeah, it is quite narrow. And I know some people are struggling a bit because they're not able to run their own race because they feel like they're trapped between other runners. I mean, in general, people were quite good at noticing when people wanted to pass and step to the side and everything. Nobody wants to be the guy who is, oh yeah, can I pass and can I pass and can I pass? So you really need to find the rhythm. Unfortunately, or perhaps this was actually fortunate, a lot of the European people weren't able to participate due to the restrictions that I was facing as well. So normally there would be like 70 or 75 participants.
I think 75 is the maximum, right? That he says he has space in his backyard.
Yeah, and I can see how that could be very crowded in the first 24 hours or so. With that many people.
Especially, I mean, not only on the trail, I wonder how they do that with the toilets, because you have a very limited time frame.
Exactly. I mean, that's the other thing. And even just tents and everything, because everybody really wants to be able to have their own tent to get back into and not just in the community area as well. So there is certainly some limits to how many people could be there.
So what bumped me out a little bit was that it's such a pity that not more people saw it, because, I mean, as I said, I watched it pretty much almost the entire time on Facebook, because it's actually quite TV friendly, because you have the fixed time roughly like that, depending on if it's night or day loop. But the fastest runner comes in around 40 something-ish minutes to the hour. Then you have kind of 20 minutes to see them running off again and to see if somebody didn't make it to the coral. So that's actually like a much more TV-friendly format than, for example, a 200-kilometer race or something, where at the end it's the finish line that's interesting, and in between you can maybe visualize distances on a graphic or something. So that's actually, I think it has so much more potential. And after all, it's just kind of an extreme feat of human endeavor, right? I mean, I must say that at the end, 85 rounds, that's 354 miles, like, I don't know, like 500 kilometers, pretty much.
570 kilometers.
It's nuts. It's nuts, right? I mean, to run this with I think Harvey Lewis average loop was 50 minutes and a bit. So like doing this with less than 10 minutes rest every hour is just incredible. It should be much more celebrated. It should be much more, I think, frontline media interest. And so that was almost a little bit sad, but at the same time, it made me feel quite privileged to watch it, and kind of made me a little bit bad when I went to sleep, because somehow you kind of feel almost bad for those people who are still going out there. And
it was actually quite amazing, because when I was done, I have a brother who lives in Kansas, and we made arrangements so they will come pick me up and my girlfriend up, and we will drive back with them. So at Sunday night, when I was feeling for a bit out Sunday evening, we drove like an hour and a half, and then we went to the hotel to get a good night's sleep. I could certainly use it for sure, but actually I was awake like nearly every hour, because I was just so curious to see how the guys do. So I was awake nearly every hour, just seeing the live feed and just seeing when it came. I was like, oh, okay, well, that's good. Then I went to sleep for like 45 minutes again, and then I was pick up, because I just couldn't leave my phone too much, because I really wanted to I don't know, kind of support the guys for still being there. And I think it's quite fun to be watching, even if I wasn't there at the end as well.
And I think I have two questions to ask that I owe the community who watched the Facebook stream. The first one is it actually a fun loop if you're running it?
Well, I must say I was getting a bit bored with the trail loop. Well, I mean, the night loop, that is just straight up boring, because it's just down the asphalt road, just out of the turnaround back. I mean, it's manageable as well, because then you can just plug in some good podcast, or you can even be nearly sleep running or something. But the trail loop, at one point I was like, well, now I've seen this, and I think for me it was a matter of, so you're doing this, you're running out, and then you're doing a loop, and then you're running around the same track back. And even though I've been doing that loop for like, I don't know, 15 times or something, I was still, at some point I was like, yeah, well, now I just need to go out of the woods, and I'm near and then I'm back at the gate. I was like, oh no, it's because there's this all little loops I need to do, and then there's like a kilometer more. So, I mean, it's definitely not the most fun loop I've ever been running in my life, that's for sure.
We were brainwashed because there was, I think every 20 minutes or so, there was a trailer with Courtney Dauwalter saying exactly this. And when you listen to the broadcast for 3 days straight, you believe kind of it's a pretty fun loop if you're running it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the second question that I have to ask you is something, I mean, you might not be aware of it, but actually there is, other than you guys and Harvey Lewis, there was another big star emerging from the race, especially from the broadcast, and that's a lock.
Yeah, actually, I saw that.
There's a Facebook, exactly. There's a Facebook page, the Big Backyard Lock Appreciation Society, which has, I don't know, like how many hundred members in the meantime, that shares mostly lock content. But I mean, that's the fun part of a camera, like setting up in the woods, waiting for runners to come. I mean, for most of the time, you see a bunch of trees and a lock that was very photogenic. And yeah, he got a nickname and a lot of stories. Yeah, how did it look from up close? I think I owe the community this question. Did you realize it?
I don't actually realize it, but I did see a lot of chattering going on in the chat about a log, and I was like, looking at this, I was like, I know exactly where this camera is set up, and I'm actually a little unsure what you're talking about, guys. I was like, well, who's the more sleep deprived? Is it you or is it me, actually?
So it was really fun. I mean, there was a lot of jokes going on because, I mean, that's the funny part, because yeah, at the end, most of the time, it was also just a few hundred people in the Facebook stream, and you recognize the names, and yeah, it became a running gag because, of course, there were, on one hand, people were asking the same question over and over, and mostly like, where's Courtney Dauwalter? It was fun. So there was this, I think trail runners have a special humor too, and you must have a special humor, I think, to enter these races. I think that's kind of the crown jewel of trail runner humor is to enter a race like this with so much pain and nothing to gain.
Yeah. Exactly. So I started out like most people do by running just normal flat asphalt races. I mean, Denmark is super flat. Yeah. And I don't think we don't have any mountains or anything really. But I found out once I switched into doing more trail running, and especially once I switched into doing more ultra running, I found that the community, and especially in the ultra running community, it feels like we are just a bunch of people cut out from the same nut cloth. There's a lot of helpfulness going on, and people know what we are talking about, and it actually feels like a large family. And I think most probably also influence on the humor and part as well.
I think that's also like one of the themes of this particular race, right? So that's why it is in his backyard, and that's why the number of participants is limited, because it was like all those races kind of originally thought of more like a family reunion of the cycle, like a circle of crazy runners who meet once per year and do a race together and share kind of a few pity tens.
Yeah. And it became quite evident for Julie, my girlfriend. She was with me as crew, and she was a bit worried that she was going to be just sitting in the corner when I was out running, and she was be sitting in the corner by herself, being the odd Dane from, I don't know, the city, the island of IKEA or something. and she was a bit worried about it. And I was like, yeah, well, you should be worrying. And she's an ultra runner herself, so she knows a lot of this. And once we got there, and it was quite evident that people were just wanting to include everyone and be helpful. So at one point we were lacking a chair for me to just lay down with a recliner, and some people overheard it and was like, well, I think we got one over here. And then a few minutes later, they came on with a perfectly fine working recliner chair for me. And at some point else, I was like, oh, well, we need some tops to put up on the tent to make more sides on the tent. And another guy was like, oh, well, we got some over here, you can have that. And I think it's actually Harvey Lewis's crew. He was having this tent right across of our, and he was like, oh yeah, and you need some zip ties. And my girlfriend, she's not very tall too, so she was actually having trouble actually getting up. So he was like, well, let me fix that for you. So it was just so family and friendly, and everyone was really helping each other out. There was like zero competitiveness going on at all.
That's also like a special part of this race, right? I mean, they call the second one an assist for a reason, because there's no finishing line. So you can only set the records if you run with a bunch of people who are as crazy as you are and almost as good as you are. Right? And that's different from a race where if you're faster, then you're fast. And some racers that race from the top, they never see any of the of the others. And here, I mean, you run with them and you need them also in a way, because else the race would be not that spectacular and interesting. And you possibly also need them for motivation, right? I mean, it's quite often that runners like fall out in bunches, not just one. So it's kind of you run together and you are as strong as the other person is in a way. And if one of them kind of then falters, then maybe you say, "Okay, I'm not feeling much better than this guy."
Exactly. I mean, it was quite evident. I think we were running out on the day loop, and it was the loop after where Sarah Moore didn't make it in or drop out. I can't remember what happened. And we were talking a bit, and then at one point I heard the quote, "Oh, that's too bad." We really need to keep the spirits up for everybody to be able to be here. And it was just so evident that everyone wanted the runner next to them to be having a good time and to be running just one more lap. So to be pushing on together. I'm rereading a book called How Bad Do We Want It, which is basically a lot around endurance athletes and with mental strategies that you can apply. And there's exactly just yesterday I read the chapter that's surrounded about the group effect, which basically is saying this. So when you are running in a group of people, you are actually doing better because you are lifting each other, and it's not quite as painful, it's not quite as hard, and you're not quite as inclined to be stopping. And also on the flip side, when people are dropping out, it comes in waves.
Cool. I think we talked a lot about the VIX, and I think I want to get a little bit more into this ultra mindset in a broader frame. I mean, we talked a bit about it also, that this is what interests you maybe the most in racing. And you also recently made a little bit of a career switch there, right? I mean, I saw that you kind of now are also coaching, and of course, coaching runners, I guess, but not just runners, right? And this mindset coaching is at least also on the list of your offerings. So I'm definitely super interested kind of to dive a little bit more into this, because that's really something that I'm also fascinating with, like persistence and how we can maybe benefit in other aspects of life from a little bit of this mindset. Luckily, don't always have to kind of drag us with blistered feet and painful knees to the office on Monday morning. But I think there's definitely moments where grit and perseverance are useful. And I'm really curious how you see this. Maybe you can tell us first kind of how your Løbetossen came about. And if I translated it right from Danish, it's run crazy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, you do it like me, right? I mean, you have this good branding where you have your website and your company, but it's also kind of your nickname in a way. It became your nickname. I think it works with my Life-Sparring kind of in a similar way in the meantime. So I'm in the meantime also that Life-Sparring guy. Smart move. I can definitely recommend the strategy.
And it actually came around just one day. I was just done doing my first marathon, and I was like, this is such an amazing achievement that I have been doing. Everybody would have to know about, because it's just so amazing. Also, I don't know if self-obsessed is the right term, but I was so much overflowing with positive energy about the achievement and everything. So that's basically where it started, and it started out just doing some blogging, and then I did a bit of a career switching, which is actually, it's more tied into running than I initially has been aware of, because actually I came to a point in my life and I got divorced, and I was at a point in my life where I was like, well, so I know that I can do a lot, and even the stuff that I don't know I can do, I can at least try to do it and see how it goes, because I have now learned that a lot of my limits aren't where I think they are even further out. So I think what all this running and especially doing the ultra runner has taught me, that I shouldn't be too afraid of just trying stuff out, and you shouldn't be afraid of failing. Being a guy who wants to be quite a lot in control, and also being a person that I would like to do everything correct and the right way, also means that I've somehow been quite scared to be failing. And that's something I've been taking away. So basically saying that, so even if you fail, you don't fail. Now you just learned something, and whichever that is. And I think that's really one of the key aspects in mindset I've been taking away from running, is that I'm not as afraid to be failing, and I'm more inclined to just try something new and see, okay, well, let's see where this leads us and where this goes. And if it's a dead end, well, then we spend some time, we most probably learn something, and then we just turn back and to go another way. So that's definitely some of the aspects I have taken with me. And I think that's actually quite important, because it also, for me at least, it means that I'm more happy in my choices, because now I feel I'm making a choice and I just come to peace with that choice, knowing that I have tried something and I might backtrack a bit, and that's perfectly fine. Or it just ends out on the other side of the mist, and I was like, wow, I didn't expect this to be here, but this is also kind of cool. So that's actually a part of it. So I decided that I've been spending like 10 years in the telco industry and in the IT businesses, IT industry as well. And I was like, well, let's try this out, but doing a bit of coaching as well. So last year during Corona, I was let off from my current work, or my last work. And I was like, well, so this is definitely a good time to be exploring this. So this is where I am right now. Unfortunately, I'm not able to live 100% of my running or coaching business, but it's going in the right direction. And I mean, this is also one of the takeaways. So I'm trying out, seeing, does this work? Well, it's not going as fast as I would have liked it to, but it's definitely going, and I'm so happy to be doing it. I would do perfectly fine with far less income doing this than I've been doing previously, because this is something I really like to be doing. So I also learned how to prioritize what is important to me, as opposed to what is important seen from a broader society generally perspective. Like I don't have a huge house or a huge car and a boat or a pool in a garden, and that's not too common in Denmark because it's not too warm. but still, I mean, I get by with less, because that gives me free time to do what's really important to me.
Do you have any ambitions, maybe really to do more in the mindset area, like in terms of kind of combining maybe really the business angle a little bit with it? Because I think that this is really something where I saw potential. I mean, I love the whole idea, because at the end then of the life sparring idea is exactly the same thing. Also to say, you have to expose yourself, you have to put yourself out there, you have to be vulnerable, because only then you can improve, only then you can find your limits and go beyond them. That's exactly the same thinking behind it. So that's why I like the move, and it's a long shot. And of course, there's quite a lot of coaches out there, but I think that there are not many people who can do what you can do, and that this is definitely something that I believe really has, as I said, this to be able to do this mind switch and to deal with this kind of environment, to run a race where you don't know when it finishes. And yeah, that's what fascinated me. If I watched the last three, it was just amazing. I mean, Chris Roberts was limping at one point. Yeah. He was doing the night loops where he came in like 1 minute, 2 minutes, most of the time 2 minutes before or 3 minutes before the whistle. So they had the 3-minute whistle, right? So there's 3 whistles when you have 3 minutes before the restart, and he almost came. Every time he went over the finishing line, immediately he got those whistles. So he knew he had only 3 minutes. And that's the night loops where you would normally kind of, if you are still relatively fresh, you run them in 45 minutes and you have maybe 10 minutes for rest and 5 minutes for eating something or so. So it was absolutely crazy, like not just that he could continue, but also for the other two who like every time would have thought like, oh, this guy is out, he can't do another round like this. And then he can do another round. And then it changes to the day loop where you think, mean, I was pretty sure that he wouldn't have no shot on the day loop because he could barely do the night loop on time. And that's special. I mean, to be able to shake this off, and how Harvey Lewis, I mean, he did, I think I can't remember which one it was, but like on lap 78 or something, or 79 or so, he did a sprint duel with Maury on the hill, where they were just for fun, like running up the hill, like sprinting for sprinting points. Yeah. And he looked as if he could still have done another. Like, he looked very unfazed, right? Very kind of as if whatever happens, he does his race. He started as one of the slowest the whole time and was so consistent, so steady. Do you really believe that this is something that this mindset is something that everybody can develop? Because if you look at the top trail runners, I mean, I had one of my more like local regional heroes on the show, Vlad Ixel, and my very first podcast. And I mean, he's a podium runner. So he wins 80-90% of the races he enters, and he races mostly in APAC, but he runs everything between marathon and shorter trail races. So I think mostly up to 50K, but he's not per se like a long ultra runner, but he runs kind of those middle distance trail runs, and he wins everything. But he started kind of running like you in his mid-20s, relatively late, after smoking and drinking and not having the healthiest lifestyle. And it took him a year or so to start winning races and being competitive. So that's always this discussion. So like a person like him is definitely just athletically gifted. I mean, he could have done something else. He could have also, if he would stayed in the tennis camp with 6 years, if he would not have run out of money at that time, I mean, he would maybe have been a competitive tennis player too, right? So, and that's the part that is like always a little bit sad for like a mediocre person like me, because I know I will never kind of make a podium in any race. But this backyard idea, of course, is a bit more fascinating because it's so much more about the mind. Sure, your body has to hold up, but you don't need the VO2 max of, I don't know, 62 to be competitive. And also if you look at I mean, a lot of the races are relatively old. I mean, you were one of the younger contestants with 36 years, right? I think the youngest was 33, I think. And like Harvey Lewis is 45. I think you and your Danish races, there were like races like in the late 50s. So it's not so much a thing of gender. It's not so much a thing of age. You also have different body types to it. Some tall guys, some shorter guys. I mean, you don't have this differences so much in sprints or in other sports, right? I mean, pole vaulters, they all are kind of, they have all a similar build, or swimmers, right? Because there is a certain genetical advantage if you are built in a certain way. And I think that this diversity speaks for it being so much more also a mind game, and that of course gives me a bit of hope, because I think mentally I have maybe a little bit more chance to compete in anything. So what do you think?
I'm quite sure that everyone can develop, if they're willing to work a bit, how they see everything in terms of the mental part of the equation here. I think everyone will be able to improve quite drastically in any sports. I don't know if it's a mind over matter type of thing, but it's really, really a huge part of it if you want to keep going. I mean, you see, in general, if you want to get into the backyard and want to, well, for the very least, push yourself to your limit, then you need to make it very hard to find excuses to stop. Meaning that if you're going to enter a race and it's like, well, my personal best is for whatever distance, or I would like to do like 24 hours, which is 100 miles, and that will be a personal best, then I will be pretty sure that you will be going to stop quite around that time once you hit the 25-hour mark, because you're getting yourself an easy out. And that's really where it comes in. So you really want to be going into these type of things with only one goal, and that has to be, I'm going to be the last one standing here. And I think it's a good analogy to apply to other aspects in your life, that you need to be going into the stuff that's important to you wholeheartedly. So you really need and you really want to be doing this without getting yourself any easy outs, because if you are setting up easy outs, then you're most probably also going to take them once you get to them. And I think in that term and that matter, I think you really are able to work a lot if you are very focused on not setting yourself up for these easy outs. And it could be in a whole array of areas. So it can be everything from what I'm going to make for dinner, or if I'm going to do the healthy choice, or if I'm going to do the easy choice. Well, if you have the easy choice, it takes a lot more to convince yourself to do the healthy choice, for instance. Not necessarily saying that the healthy choice isn't the easy choice, but if the easy choice is ordering a pizza, or you have to make the pizza from bottom up, I mean, you're going to invest more time to doing pizza from the bottom up. So in that sense, I think there's a lot of things that you could be working with. And I think a lot of us is actually giving ourselves a lot of easy outs 100 times a day without even realizing it. I think that's actually one of the places where you can actually start. Right now, just this weekend, I was having a course on habit coaching and how to break your habits. And a lot of this is centered around doing just very small steps, because once you figure out, okay, I can do this, and you feel a sense of accomplishment, then it's easier for you to do this and to this and to do this, which will spread out as reason. So in this sense, I think there's really something that you could be working on here, not necessarily having to be ultra running and just doing loops an endless amount of times.
It's interesting because you have kind of still a holistic plan in that way, because I think that the other extreme strategy is what some of the runners say is, I don't care. I always just focus on the next loop. I always just say I just have to complete this loop. And that's kind of the opposite strategy, kind of to make the goal kind of as small as possible and say, I don't care. I just do one loop, and I do another one loop and one loop and one loop. And you just don't notice anything else. You just focus on the loop. And this is something, to be honest, that I'm not the best at. I suck at it big time, because I'm kind of a forward-thinking person. I'm always in my mind very often at the next kind of big step and the goal. I'm a very goal-oriented person, I would say. And I struggle, even though I also try mindfulness meditation and a lot of things, but it's just not something that comes to me natural. I would have problems with just this loop thing, because in my mind, I would kind of calculate and see and analyze and say, oh, if my knee feels like this right now, that means in 3 rounds when it goes back to the day loop, then this might become a problem or something, right? So that's kind of interesting, because I think that's maybe there are really like 2 types of runners, like the ones like you who have kind of more like a game plan and more like an overall mindset approach, and those who really say, nah, completely be in the moment, just focus on this particular loop.
I think both ways to be viewing it has a lot of merits. And I actually think also I'm doing a bit switch back and forth during a race like Backyard, because at one point I have found out that when I'm starting to struggle for whichever reason, so for instance, having stomach problems, I'm having a hard time seeing the whole, keeping it holistic and just saying this. So at that time, I tend to zoom in and then try to do, okay, well, so I'm just going to do this one loop. Once I get back from this loop, I'll get some mashed potatoes, and that's perfect. And then that will help. And then I don't have to do this. And at one point, when I get better, at one point I switch out again and try to do this whole holistic type of view again. So for me, I'm actually switching back and forth a bit. But as you mentioned, it doesn't come naturally too much for me to just say, okay, I'm just going to do one more loop. I'm just going to do one more loop. I can do it, and especially I can do it if I am a bit distracted because it's a nice scenery or I'm chatting along with other runners and stuff. It's a lot easier for me to be doing, because then I'm not focused. I was like, yeah, well, then this was another loop. That was fun. Let's do this again in like, let's say 5 minutes or so. So for me, I'm switching back and forth a bit. But in general, I like the approach more being more holistic and looking at it in a broader perspective, as opposed to just keeping small goals everywhere.
Pretty interesting. Okay, I think we covered a lot of ground. So normally the podcasts are more like mid-distance, not completely ultra. I think I've never recorded more than 1.5 hours or so. But I think I'm definitely interested what's next for you. So you have your own races that you organized. It looks as if you're coming back to the backyard. I mean, you didn't seem to have enough of it yet.
Oh, I definitely don't have enough. I mean, it didn't take many hours before I was able to So we need to get back working because I need to be back here in 2023. So right now the plan is to get a good rest here. And then by March, the format has changed a bit. So now you don't have a golden ticket race. You now have silver ticket race where you need to win yourself access to the teams event, which will next October, where we are competing Denmark and all the countries basically together as a team of 15 runners. And then we are doing it simultaneously, like we did last year, actually, with the whole Corona. And the Danish team there will get the golden ticket to be going back to Tennessee in 2023. So basically what the plan is here, I'm going to be racing in March for the silver ticket race, which is the original race in Denmark, so to speak. And I really hope that there will be a lot of guys really wanting to push themselves, because I would really like to be pushing the boundaries at least up to 2 full days of 48 hours for sure. And hopefully that will make sure that I'll be able to enter the national team. And then it's just a matter of taking one loop at a time and winning, because I definitely would love to go back to Tennessee and have another crack at it. That's for sure.
Good. And are you planning to organize more races in the format? I mean, you have already kind of this Road the Clock race in Denmark. That's also like a similar format, but you cap it normally at 100 kilometers, or how did it work?
So in the past, I've been capping it around 10 loops, or this year I did like 15 loops, so it's like 100 kilometers, because a lot of my participants were like, well, can we do 15? Because then it's 100 kilometers as opposed to just 50 miles. I was like, well, sure, we can if you're crazy enough. I'm certainly crazy enough to do that. But actually next year, Round the Clock will be also a silver ticket event. So whoever wins at my race will also earn a spot in the national team. So I am organizing that. And actually I am also organizing a limited winter edition, which will be held in January. So hopefully there will be snow and everything in January in Denmark. And that will be capped for 15 hours. So 100 kilometers.
But your own race, you can't enter as a participant, or will you also race your own race?
I mean, the first time I did it, I actually did the race as my own training up until the Danish backyard, and I was racing along, and it was super fun, and we were like 40 participants or so that was a lot of fun. But I wouldn't do it in my own race anymore, and I wouldn't want to do it either, actually, because I think it is just so rewarding to be organizing the race and have the ability to chat with people and seeing how they're doing and try to help them a bit as well, because a lot of things can be said about Lazarus Lake. And surely if you watch documentaries about the Barclays and everything, you would look at him saying, okay, he's a cruel guy. He just wants to see people suffer. But actually, on the contrary, he really wants you to succeed in finding your limit and pushing your limits. And I feel the same. I think if I could get all my participants to just be going for like 30 hours, 40 hours, 50 hours, I would love to do that, because it's so rewarding to be on the other end of it as well.
That's, I think, a really important point, right? I think he's famous for saying it's easy to create a race that's undoable. It's not so easy to do like a race that's doable, but people don't feel it's doable, right? And that was for the Barclays for the longest time, right? I mean, they held it 15 times and nobody ever finished. And then it took one person to finish it. And then you have this phenomenon that you had also, I don't know, like with mile races or something. Then if one person can do it, then suddenly a lot of other people realize they also can do it. And he had to make the race harder. Because he was feeling he has to push it kind of a little bit further. I think that's fascinating too. It seems that race organizing is also something you're having too much fun to stop doing.
It's a lot of hours and it's a lot of work, and it's definitely something that I'm getting rich of, but it's just giving me so much more in terms of new friendships and really seeing people working and doing the best at what they love to be doing. So I can definitely see why he's keep doing it. It's just so much fun. And especially the backyard setup, because you get people back at the camp every hour. So they get to chat back and forth for people. I mean, one of the beauties of this is that if I participate in a race, I usually will be running along people that run roughly the same tempo as I. So the front runners, I will never see their takeoff. And once I cross the finish line, they're already gone home. And I mean, the back of the pack as well, most probably I won't see them either.
I'm always happy if there's still something left to eat when I arrive.
Yeah. And I mean, that's really so in the backyard, I mean, every hour, even the fastest guys, I'm standing right next to them. I can be chatting. And even the slowest guys, I'll be standing right next to them running, because at this particular lap, I might be doing extra slow because I really don't need to be doing anything in the break. And then another lap again, I'll be okay, now I'm running it really fast because I need to both go to the toilet and change socks and everything, right? So that's really one of the beauties of it. So we really just keep meeting people across and speaking with people. And of course, once you spend like 10, 15, 20 hours out on the trail and everyone is hurting and everything, you get to know people on a way that you will never do unless you spend a hell of a lot more time together with them.
That's kind of like the war experience, right? In a way.
Yeah, I would imagine that's kind of the Band of Brothers or something like that. I mean, it's I think it's along those lines.
And now that you are kind of official international ultra running royalty, did you feel a difference already? I mean, you're on a podcast with a guy from Hong Kong, but in general, did you kind of feel that more people are reaching out to you? I mean, I saw you were quoted in a few articles about the backyard. I think you did well enough kind of to be high up on the list, and you finished early enough so that you were not completely spent and you could still give coherent interviews the next day also.
Yeah, I heard that there was like a lot of Danish people rooting for me in the chat as well. It was really heartwarming, and there's a bit more interest. I was like, I'm also a bit aware. So if I need to just take this in and enjoy the whole interest and see if just enjoy and see where this goes and just be open. So when you reached out to me, it's like, sure, if there's anything I like to do, that is basically talk about running, and especially a lot of running. So I mean, that's really something. I don't know if it's a lot of change, but it's really fun just to see your picture in a news magazine. So this is actually the first time anyone has written an article about me, specifically about me, I think. So that's actually quite fun to be watching yourself there. But here in Aalborg, where I live, there's another very good ultra runner called, I think she has a silver European medal in 24 hours, and she's like second or third for 24 hours on a treadmill as well. She's one of my good friends, and I mean, there's a good amount of really good runners here in Aalborg and this area around. It's not like it's, wow, so now we got an ultra runner on international level or something. To be fair, I'm not really seeing myself in any other light. I still refer to myself as a hobby jogger.
The long hobby jog that you're doing there.
Yeah. I mean, and also my co-workers, they're also just, I mean, the first time I came back when I won the Danish race, and so they were asking, so how long did you run? I was like, yeah, I did like 39 hours, and you just see the eyes just turn completely blank. I was like, can you repeat that? Because I thought you said 39 hours. That's just crazy stupid. So that's still the same. But a lot of people has just pop by and Messenger on Facebook and say, oh, well, that's really nice. We were following you. And even people that normally wouldn't be interested in running and so forth and everything. And I think also that's what's part of what the backyard is doing. It's like you said, it's very, very friendly to be watching and easy to understand. And then the rules are simple, and it's not really a lot about running. It's a lot about the mental aspect and seeing people, well, somewhat slowly fall apart, I guess.
That's awesome. I was fascinated by it. And I was always, I mean, the longest I've run is a 50K. And I was just thinking, in proportion to a 50K and how much I am spent and how much I am hurting, I mean, how much you guys all must be in pain. But then I read a scientific study that pretty much after around 15 hours, it's not getting worse anymore. Basically, you reach maximum pain level.
Well, that's good to know. Then you might as well just be going after 30 hours.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the funny thing, right? So that it's not so much muscle fatigue. So they basically say muscle fatigue is not the problem anymore. So the problem becomes more like mechanical problem. And then it's like this digestion, like accumulation of kind of stress on your nutrition, and of course the sleep matter. Being sleep deprived is one of the biggest factors, right? At the end, it's people running the wrong direction and completely forgetting what they're actually doing or supposed to do, and that this is kind of at the end getting to you. And this is more like a function of the lack of sleep, funnily.
Yeah.
So
I haven't read too much about Harvey if he has been seeing any hallucinations, but I would imagine you would after 85 hours with very limited amount of sleep.
But I must say, I mean, that was fascinating also, like when Chris, even more than Harvey, came in, they were really still functioning so extremely well. They were chatting. I mean, Chris was like really giving interviews and like talking.
Very cohesive and everything.
Absolutely. I mean, I was completely amazed. I would really expect them really to mumble and not make too much sense, or ask a bunch of times if the race is over or something. Like, I was super surprised. And as I said, Harvey looked anyway as if he could kind of do that for another day if he would have had to.
And that's really what's amazing, because you look at these guys, and if it wasn't for Chris's knee, and if Maury didn't fail the time he did, and the last 4 or 5 guys, I mean, you were looking at them like, well, there's basically no limits to these guys. It looks like, from the way they're working right now, it looks like they could just keep going, because it just enters some sort of rhythm where they can keep up the calorie intakes and manage just about the right amount of sleep, and everything is just basically just going on cruise control. I'm sure it didn't feel like way for them, but it really looks that way, even from a person who has actually been on the loop a few days earlier.
And how is recovery after a race like this? I mean, how long do you need to recover completely? And when do you think you're kind of back to your normal training routine and nothing is aching anymore?
I was actually didn't have any injuries, so it's just a matter of my stomach hurting, and that was basically it, right? So I was actually surprised, because I was tired on legs for sure, but I felt like I was be able to be running just a few days after. However, because we were driving to see my brother, and then we were flying back home to Denmark the Saturday after the race started. And so we were back home in Denmark by 9 in the evening. And on Monday, I did 11K, I think. So that was last week. And then I did 10K Friday afternoon as well on treadmill, with a bit of elevation. I just decided that this was such a unique experience that I need to get myself a memorial type of tattooing on my leg. So I actually went down to get that done on Wednesday. So that's why I'm on the treadmill. So I think I'll take this week more or less off as well from running to some extent, or at least maybe just do like 2, 3, 4 shorter runs. And then I think I'll slowly prepare. I'm just getting adjusted to the colder weather in Denmark, and it's being dark from nearly for when you leave for work and when you're back home as well. So it's just a matter of getting out of that tipping point as well. But I was actually very surprised, because I didn't feel smashed and bumped anywhere in my body as I was expecting. And I mean, back in August, when I was done with the 39 laps, and I mean, for sure, I did like 54 kilometers more back then. I was just completely smashed. I was just feeling so bad everywhere in my body, and especially my knees. And even when I did go for a run afterwards there, it just feels like my legs are just empty for energy and just heavy. And I haven't had the same experience, so I was a little surprised actually. So I have already been looking at this and like, oh, well, what type of races could we be looking at in December or January, for instance, just to keep going for practicing. But I think right now I'll mainly be doing some half marathon trail runs as the race primarily, and then most probably will fit in a half or a full marathon or a shorter ultra run in December or January. So
do you have data from the run, like how much calories did you burn through like the 39 laps in Denmark?
One of the data points I actually can remember is I was tracking 39 hours, and back in Denmark I was doing just shy of 35 hours in motion. So I think I had 4 hours of basically sitting or standing still when I was running in Denmark, which actually came by a surprise. But I had it quite easy in Denmark, which might sound crazy, but I was doing a lot of walking and I was just having so much fun with the other guys. So my Garmin tells me that I have burned 19,000 calories under 39 hours.
That would be fun to kind of visualize that in terms of McDonald's menus or something, like kind of like just like what burger mountain you could eat without gaining it.
Yeah. So according to my Garmin, it said back then when I was running in Denmark, I did 6,600 meters of elevation gain during the loop. So it wasn't the easiest loop, and I think I got that right here.
No, I mean, you did the Everesting, right? So I mean, you're not shy of kind of doing elevation, right? So
yeah, I mean, even though Denmark is flat, you are able to find some quite steep hills, and that's correct. A few last year, I think, I did the Everesting event where we did like 130 Ks and doing the elevation of Everest, which was just amazingly hard, to be honest. No, actually, I did 33 hours and 55 minutes of actual moving. So I had like 5 hours of not moving through those 39 hours, according to my Garmin. And I didn't stop stop the watch at any time in the Danish race.
It sounds like more than it is, right? Because like if you chunk it up in this 5 to 15 minute blocks, I mean, that's the problem, right? That if you would have like every 5 hours, half an hour break or something, or an hour break, I think you could possibly last even longer, because then you could really sleep half an hour, and that would make all the difference. But I think that that's the fascinating part of this race, and the humans are not Formula 1 cars where you can just kind of plug in fuel and change the wires, the wheels and everything.
And that's really where it's different from traditional ultra running and even the long ultra running or even the stage runs. So, I mean, if you have a long ultra run, so like say like 200 miles or 250 miles, for instance, you can have a good break for like an hour or half an hour or even 2 hours if that's what you needed. But you cannot do this in the backyard. It's just, I know a lot of guys who are very, very good and doing crazy distances. And they showed up the backyard and they did a few laps, and I was like, yep, no, this isn't for me. Because I need to be able to manage my breaks in a larger chunks, actually.
You can't completely do your own rhythm in that sense. You are forced to adjust to the rules of the race, and it is an equalizer to some extent, and that's the funny part about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so before I let you enjoy your dinner, do you have one kind of secret ultra trail runner recipe like that nobody knows? I mean, we heard already about Danish rye for substance in between, but do you have one more? Like, what is one? Can be gear, can be nutrition, can be anything, like anything that's a well-kept secret.
Oh, I'm not good at secrets, to be honest, because as you know by now, I love to be chatting about running. But I mean, a general advice would be, if you're doing it, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons and make sure that your motivation is on point. Sometimes I have people come to me saying, oh, I wanted to do a marathon. And then when we do the initial talk a bit, I was talking about the motivation. It quite often became clear they don't want to be doing it because they want to be running it. They want to be doing it because their husband has told them that they need to be going exercising, or everyone else is doing this. And, oh, well, that would be nice to be telling people I've been doing a marathon. And I was like, there's not any bad type of motivation to reasons to be running a marathon, for instance, but just to make sure that it's important for you and it comes from the inside. Because once you're out there and you're doing ultra running, there will be a lot of time when you'll be thinking, well, somehow I'm doing this. And then you need to really dig into yourself, look into yourself, seeing, so this is why I'm doing it. Because if it's because your husband or your wife says you need to be moving your ass out of the sofa, then it's easy to tell itself, well, I've been doing this for the last 10 hours. Now I'm going back to the sofa.
It's definitely a good one. I mean, it comes in waves, right? I mean, marathons for a while, you just had to do it to post on LinkedIn what you learned from it and why you're now a better manager.
Exactly, yeah, and it's perfectly fine if that's why you want to do it, but really get yourself a bit of time to reflect on why you want to be doing this. And once you have this why figured out, it's a hell of a lot easier to actually be doing it. And actually, I have one bonus one, but that's generally a circle around the training. It's just consistency is key. Don't think that you can skip a training this week and just put an extra run in next week, and then next week, then you're on vacation doing nothing at all. I mean, it's just be consistent in your training. That's what really will get you there.
Absolutely. Great. So I think we did it, Morten. Really like fun talking to you. And as I said, I was really fanboying out a little bit. Like, it was really fun to see you on the trails. It was awesome to see you after the race, after you dropped out, to see you still on Facebook chatting with the people who were following the race. It was great also to have like directly somebody kind of chiming in on the experience. Yeah, it was really fun. And I can't wait to see you again at one of those races. And I will definitely follow this whole backyard elimination qualification process until the next World Championship. I guess the best way to reach you if somebody wants to get a little bit of personal training from you is through your Løbetossen website. You also have the same handle for Instagram. I will link everything in our show notes. I guess that's it. Do you have still anything you want to share? Anything we didn't cover, or anything that people still need to know also when they want to hire you?
No, I think I'll just say thank you very much for having me on this podcast. I had really enjoyed talking to you, and as I said, I love chatting about running, and especially ultra running. So it's been amazing, and I am very, very happy that you reached out to me and asked me if you wanted to join. That's cool.
Awesome. Then thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
This was Life Sparring Round 16, Big Dog's Backyard and the Ultra Mindset, with guest Morten Klingenberg and me, your host Fabian Gruber. Life Sparring is produced by Thomas Latter. Intro and outro beat are by my Casey producer. More infos about Life Sparring and this episode, including links to our guest and resources mentioned in the show, you can find at Life-Sparring.com/podcast. Life Sparring with a hyphen. If this show motivated you to go out for a run, give it a like wherever you're getting your podcast from, and subscribe to not miss any future episodes. I hope you join us again for the next round of Life Sparring. Until then, stay healthy, keep your hands up, and protect yourself at all times.